Hi everyone, welcome back to the second part of the session on customer segments and value proposition. Obviously in this session we're going to be talking specifically about the value proposition. How do we develop that, and how are we going to use what we've done in session 1 where we've looked at customer segments to inform this, because obviously what we don't want to do is do all that work around understanding our customer, developing those profiles, getting those really kind of rich and detailed insights, only to then not use it. So it's important that this process is fluid, and that everything we've learned about our customer is used in the construction and development of our value proposition. Okay, so let's start off by thinking about how we develop value just generally for customers. Okay, so developing value for customers, or creating customer value, is about us balancing this equation, if you like. So on the one side, we've obviously got those perceived benefits that the customer perceives themselves to gain from buying a certain product or service. And on the other side, we have those sacrifices that they will make as a result of that product or service. Okay, and we can break those benefits and sacrifices down into some specific areas. So if we look over here, obviously there are benefits in terms of the specific functional benefits that the customer will receive as a result of consuming the product or service. So, if that's a sandwich, it would be kind of addressing your hunger. If it's a haircut, then it would be obviously having tidier, more manageable hair. And there are lots of kind of functional benefits that go on. And generally speaking, when we talk to customers about why they consume certain products or services, they will tell us about those functional benefits. So they will rationalise everything. So they'll always tell us the reason they buy a pair of Nike trainers is because they're comfortable. So it's not going to be about the image benefits, which is this part here, but it's important that we are aware of that in case it is something really influential in our particular consumption context, in the setting that we're working in, for the organisation that we're working for. So there obviously, as I say, there can be image benefits to consuming a product service, and that might be, us walking around with our Starbucks coffee and that how that makes us feel, us owning an Apple iPhone, and the fact that it's Apple and the kind of symbolism attached to that, and probably even more so with clothing items that we buy. So there are benefits to us wearing certain brands, and that's something that we just need to be aware of. There are also relational benefits to connecting with certain brands, or there might even be some kind of value-based offers, such as from the club card in Tesco that we receive. So there are other kinds of benefits that we can obtain as customers, but broadly speaking, we categorise them into these 4 different areas. And then obviously on the sacrifice side, nothing comes without a price, as it were. So there are obviously monetary costs, so it's going to cost us something in terms of money. So we're going to pay something for that product or service, and that equates to being a sacrifice. There are time costs in terms of it might take us some time to do something, or some time to find something, some effort involved in actually locating what it is that we want to buy. So that sort of breeds into overlaps with energy costs as well. If we can't find what we want to buy in the first shop in Sheffield and we've got to trail around a little bit, that's going to cost us time and it's going to cost us energy. Okay, and then there are psychological costs, and this kind of links to the image benefits. So in the same way that we might benefit from owning a particular brand, there might be a psychological cost to owning a brand that we don't want to own. So kind of negative symbolism, if you like. So something that might not represent who we want to represent, but for whatever reason we've bought it. So our job in as marketeers and as people interested in developing value propositions is to balance this equation, if you like. So what we're trying to do is obviously increase the benefits and make those benefits really clear to our target audience, and reduce the sacrifices. Now that's not always about reducing the monetary cost and having a lower price, because we know customers don't always buy the cheapest in any given product category. And we also know that there is a tenuous link between price and quality. So if something is a lower price, inherently customers assume the quality isn't quite so good. So we have to be careful around that. But we might want to reduce elements like the energy expended in finding our products, or the use of our website and how easy that is to use. So we might look to reduce some of the costs in that respect, but we always have to be mindful of what our value proposition is. We don't want to, if we're an exclusive luxury brand of handbags, we're not going to be stocking those handbags in every single shop around Sheffield just to make it easy for the consumer, because we recognise that a consumer would happily sort of shop around and look for that bag because it's important to them. But likewise, if we're KitKat, we know that if somebody goes over to Sainsbury's and we're out of stock, then the likelihood is they'll just buy Mars or something else. They're not going to shop all around Sheffield looking for a KitKat. So it's very much about you knowing and understanding both your customer and the kind of what we'd call the consumption context, so the setting, the scenario that your organisation is in, and how that product or service is actually specifically consumed. Okay, let's apply this then to some elements from the business model canvas. So if we link what we've just been talking about, I mean, I prefer, I would say this, but I prefer that kind of model that we've just looked at in terms of articulating and explaining the difference between perceived benefits and perceived sacrifices. But from a strategise a business model canvas point of view, these would be seen as our gains and pains. So all customers have some gains that they are looking to obtain, their perceived benefits, and some pains that they are looking to alleviate or reduce, and that's their perceived sacrifices. And equally, they might have a list of customer jobs as well, so tasks that they want to perform, things they want to get done. And if you go on the Strategizer website, there's a really short 2-minute video that shows you how this works in a bit more detail. But this is essentially how we create value for the customer, by thinking about what the customer needs are, thinking about those kinds of sacrifices and pains that we can reduce, and what it is they're trying to get done and trying to achieve. And that is ultimately where the value will derive from. So I'm hoping you're starting to see now why I banged on so much about understanding the customer in the first session, because now having that information, we can feed that into our diagram here and start to get to grips with what our value proposition might look like. But remembering that this is based on a specific target segment, so not sort of trying to be everything to everybody, because straight away you would see that this diagram would become hugely overpopulated, and we'd really struggle to prioritise which areas we should work on. So that's why it's important we identify 1 or 2, possibly 3 if we're a large different kind of organisation, segments to target. Okay, remembering that I did mention last time, I touched on this idea that in value terms we can break the gains down into required, expected and desired. So I talked to you about them in the context of in the marketing area I teach, we call these hygiene factors and motivators. But the gains are things which so the required gains are without which a solution wouldn't work. So the most basic expectation that we have of a product or service. So for example, with your smartphone, it's not going to work if it's not going to work for you at the basic level if you can't send texts or make calls. Okay, the expected gains are still relatively basic things that we would be expecting as a customer from the product or service, even if it could work without them. So for example, Apple launching the iPhone and it looking good and being very well designed. Okay, and then the desired things are the things that go beyond our minimum expectations, and these are the things that truly motivate customers and get them to choose one brand over another, and the things that customers really love. So if we really desire something, sometimes we might not know what they are. But it may be things like the smartphone sort of seamlessly integrating with other pieces of equipment, other devices, and that's something that would work really well for us. But then equally we have these unexpected gains. So these are the things that we don't know what they are as customers, from a customer point of view. And even if we ask customers, they wouldn't be able to always tell us and articulate what those unexpected gains might be. So for example, a touch screen, no customer's going to come to you when you do research with them, an Apple customer, and say, oh yeah, we really want a touch screen, because it's not something they'd even considered. Okay, and often that's achieved either through product innovation, but it can be really simple things like just really great service can be an unexpected gain, being super helpful for customers. So it doesn't always have to be a super innovative product feature. It can just be, it's just going the extra mile for the customer. For a lot of small businesses, that's really what it'll be about. It'll be about a personal touch, or a really nice level of human interaction that will be the unexpected gain that the customer's going to feel. And those things are important because, as I say, they influence us, they influence our loyalty, and particularly if they're human interactions, they make us feel a connection to the product or service. So ultimately, customers have lots of choice, don't they? In most industries, in most scenarios, you will find that there isn't just your organisation, there's lots of different choices. So this is what I was just saying on the last slide, really, is that we must satisfy those kind of basic required and expected customer gains. Those are the failure preventers. So those are the things that just stop us from failing and actually make us a possible contender, but they're not the ones that guarantee customers to come to us. In order for us to succeed, we've got to deliver on those unexpected gains, those unexpected benefits. Those are the things that stimulate a really positive attitude in our customers, our target audience, and ultimately will drive them to buy from us rather than others, and will make that great connection between us and our target segment. Okay, so let's think specifically then about what our value proposition is. So a value proposition is a clear and compelling expression of the experience a customer will receive. So it's got to be something a little bit different, a little bit unique. Not entirely unique, because that's probably almost impossible these days, but it's got to be something that's a little bit, even at the most incremental level, different, and different in a way that's interesting to customers. So it's no good just, sort of saying you're different for a random reason. It has to be something that customers are going to get excited about, that they're going to be interested in. And if you look up some kind of really, examples of great value propositions, Uber is the one that always comes up, just because it's super, super convenient. So never underestimate taking the pain away for customers. That's a really valuable value proposition. Just offering something that's easy and convenient can sometimes be all it takes to influence the customers to come to you rather than your competitors, just because it's things that make our life easier. If you go back to those customer pains, if we can take some of those customer pains away, and do the jobs for them, then that's going to put us in a really strong and powerful position. We can also have a look at this model. Is quite helpful in terms of thinking about how we create value, because Kotler took this idea from Levitt and adapted it. And what we're saying that every product or service we engage in, we can break down into these different levels. So there's always the core benefit that the customer is seeking. Okay, so what is this? If you think about, I often use a hotel room actually as an example on this model. So the core benefit might be, and it's going to be different for different groups of customers. I hope we learnt that from session 1, so we should know that. So the core benefit for a particular group of customers might be a restful night's sleep. So at the basic product level, we're going to expect that our room has a locking door and it's got a bed and maybe a bathroom. Okay. At the expected product, we're going to expect the sheets are clean, the towels are clean, the room is relatively clean, there's perhaps a TV in there, or drinks making facilities. So there's going to be some extra things. And this very much relates to those kind of those gains we were talking about in terms of sort of the required and expected gains. And then at this kind of augmented product level is where we fit in with the desired gains. So this is the area where we can find a source of differentiation. So is it exceptional customer service in the hotel, or is it the fresh milk that you put in the fridge in the hotel? They've got a fridge in their room and that's what makes them different. So here we can augment and change our value proposition and really match it to what the things that the customer's super interested in. Okay. Now the potential product level is just to remind us that there are always extra things we need to be thinking about. One of the things with this model is that things change over time. So the more you do for a customer, the more it becomes expected, inevitably. So, at one time, power steering would have been an augmentation on a car, but now we expect all cars to have electric windows, power steering, and all these things that at one time would have been the level of augmentation. So progressively, the different gains move inward. So this is why companies often have to keep kind of evolving and reshaping their value propositions to keep them up and up to speed with their customer segments' changing needs and requirements. Okay, so let's look at it from a value proposition canvas point of view. So this is where we start to map out what the customer, all the customer elements, their wants, their needs, their fears, and then the kind of benefits, features and experience that we can offer as part of our product or service. And we start to really match these together. So this over here, our rich understanding that we gathered in session 1, pushes forward the value proposition. So when you do your assignments and when you talk to your clients, I really expect to see that there's a strong correlation between the customer, who they are, what they're interested in, and your value proposition. That must be very, very well connected and correlated. It's no good at being disjointed and not showing any evidence of making the connection between the two, because it's fundamentally important that we get this right here. So thinking about the value proposition, obviously what we want to do is create gains for our customers. So we need to think about what elements of what we're doing creates gains. Are there elements that relieve pain, so take away problems or solve problems for the customer? And how are you going to deliver that? Okay, so it's not just what is it you create, but how are you actually going to deliver it and get it to the customer, which sometimes can be problematic. And as I just said on the last slide, what's really important here is that we have this great fit. So there's a really obvious connection and fit between these pain relievers and gain creators and the customer profile. So we can see a seamless connection between these two. As I said in session 1, if you do this work really, really well, if you do a really great job of this and you've got this rich insight, it should be obvious what this is made up of. Because you've got all the detail there in the customer profile, and it's just a case of thinking about how you might execute that and put it into action. Okay, so once we've a good idea of what our value proposition is, and once we've developed it, we need to think about other aspects like positioning. So positioning is kind of that value proposition or our brand image, whatever we want to forge in the mind of the customers, aligned with who we're competing with, because nobody operates in a vacuum or in isolation. We're all relative to our competitors. So remember, we're trying to get the customer to choose us rather than them, and therefore we need to think about positioning. And positioning is about demonstrating that there are differences, sustainable differences between what we are doing and what our competitors are doing in the mind of the consumer. So it only exists in the mind of the consumer. So if we think about chocolate bars, I like thinking about chocolate bars, to be honest. We consider, look at how all the different chocolate bars are positioned in the market. These criteria generally come from what we call customer choice factors, come from things that the customer's interested in. There's no good doing a positioning map based on things they're not bothered about. So here we make the assumption that we're looking through the sort of youthful and sociable products, or luxury and mature products, and we're all positioned in a slightly different way. And this will all be appealing to different various groups of customers. Okay, so we need to also think about, perceptually, how are we, are we in a really crowded marketplace like this, or have we managed to forge out a gap and occupier gaps. Again, that might be something you want to talk to your clients about and think about in the assignment. Okay, guys, so remember, this value proposition development is very much driven by understanding the customer. Okay, so that deep and rich understanding of what influences them, what are they interested in. And it will also tell us things like how we get our product or service to them. So we need great fit between those two. They should really be very closely aligned. And actually, it should be super obvious to me when I read your work that there's a great fit between the value, the customer, what they're interested in, and then the value proposition. But equally, it's important that they know that we can do this stuff. Often we get organisations that develop really fantastic, well-developed value propositions, but if the customer doesn't know they exist, no brand awareness, then that's hugely problematic as well. Okay, guys, so I want you to have a go at some of this stuff in your own time, and then obviously come and have a talk to me about how you're getting on with that and ask any questions if you need to. So I hope that's been useful.